the sound of a glass hitting the microphone stand. A clear, decisive ringing sound that cut through the room. My father smiled the way men about to humiliate their foster children do. "Some children make you proud," he said. "Others just take up space." Laughter rippled across the tables, small, nervous, eager to keep safe. The chandelier illuminated my sister's face. Perfect, polished, ready for the camera. I didn't feel angry, not yet. Anger needed air, and mine was trapped under the weight of the silence. The water shimmered hot as I swallowed it down with humiliation. He looked at me like a banker looking at a bad investment. Calm, detached, certain to lose. He'd waited years to say something like that. He just needed the right person to listen. I put down my glass, slowly enough to feel the sting. "Thank goodness," I said, my voice flat. "I just got my own place. 2,000 miles away." The words fell like crystals shattering on the tile. For a heartbeat, something in his face slipped away, then returned to normal, as it always did. No one stopped me as I stood up. Mom adjusted her napkin. Kelsey chuckled. Even the band pretended to tune the guitar without actually needing to. I stepped outside barefoot, heels in hand. Dignity is easier to carry when it's light. Outside, the air no longer smelled of money. It smelled of wet grass and the moment before a storm. Freedom doesn't always come with a bang. Sometimes it leaves the room quietly, still wearing a cocktail dress and a forced smile. And that night, that wasn't the beginning. It was only the first time I stopped confusing obedience with love. I didn't drive far that night. Just to the edge of town, a hotel shaped like a regret, its neon lights flashing half its name. The carpet smelled of bleach and wedding leftovers. I sat on the bed, in my dress, glitter still clinging to my wrists, and waited for the room to decide what it thought of me. There was a knock on the door next door, laughter, the muffled rhythm of someone else's survival. I stared at my reflection on the dark TV screen. The woman staring back didn't look like anyone's daughter. She looked like a witness finally coming forward. My phone buzzed, a text from Lucas. A photo of uncooked chicken, caption, "Still alive. Have you eaten?" He didn't know yet. None of them knew. He was 2 states away. Too nice, too far from the noise. Sometimes kindness feels like distance. I kicked the dress out, fold it once, twice, as evidence to be recorded and forgotten. Open my laptop, a folder labeled Event Info. Inside, job listings, rent prices, bus routes. Instead of helping, he handed me a contract. 10% interest, 1-year default clause, typed in 12-point Times New Roman. My signature grew smaller with each page. When I finished, he smiled like a loan shark closing a deal. "Proud of you for taking responsibility," he said. I was barely 20. My sister had just wrecked her car and bought a shinier one before the week was out. No paperwork, no interest, just cake and forgiveness. The icing read, "Welcome home, smart girl." I remember thinking, maybe grace is just credit in a better light. That was the rhythm of our house. Printed support, notarized affection. Mom called it structure. Dad called it fairness. I call it learning to be in debt quietly. I worked nights at school, saving every decimal. Yet the debt still clung like moisture. He would occasionally remind me, casually, "Don't forget your next payment," as if love expired every month. When I mailed the last check, he texted a thumbs up emoji. Not a word. Just an electronic receipt that the obligation was over. That night, I bought myself a cheap bottle of wine and realized freedom tasted like something you pour yourself. But debts don't disappear. They change shape. And his latest debt was self-esteem. Something you never pay off. I thought silence was peace. Turns out it was just interest that kept accumulating. The country club smelled faintly of money that never sweated. White linen, monogrammed napkins, polished laughter. Everyone pretended the world was in balance. Kelsey slid through like a brand new credit card. Limitless, beloved, unaffected by consequences. Dinner flowed into speeches. Champagne was poured. I could hear my name whispered once, twice, followed by the kind of silence people use to express pity. It felt almost comforting. At least they remembered I existed. Mom's smile was still porcelain. Her eyes only glanced at me when someone else was looking. We had mastered that family choreography, showing warmth, avoiding contact, never breaking the frame. It was theater, and I was tired of playing the part. When my father raised his glass, I knew the lines before he said them. I'd spent years practicing my silence. He said them anyway, those perfect, fatal words. The kind that sounded like love if it stopped mid-sentence. Afterward, I sat there, arms still folded, heart pounding under the tablecloth. The crystal, the silver, the noise, it all felt like paperwork. Between his toast and my departure, a hinge inside me found its purpose. I didn't leave, I evaporated, leaving my seat, my script, my inheritance. Freedom didn't announce itself. It just stopped apologizing. The hallway outside smelled of rain and endings. In the glass door, I caught my own reflection. Barefoot, wild-eyed, finally honest. For the first time in my life, I didn't wait to be called back. The night didn't fall. It happened. And I followed my own breathing straight into the darkness. The hotel room was cold in that neutral, corporate way. A place meant for people passing through. I dropped my heels on the carpet and watched them fall apart from posture to object. Glitter dusted my knees. My reflection in the mirror looked like someone halfway erased. Somehow that felt honest. The minibar hummed. I poured a plastic cup of sparkling water. It burned again. Less humiliation this time, more reminder. On the desk, I opened my laptop. The folder labeled event stuff blinked open. Camouflaged, harmless, until you looked inside. Job listings. Cheap apartments. One spreadsheet titled Oxygen. Columns for cities, cost of living, distance from Indiana. A budget for how far grief could travel on a tank of gas. It wasn't running away. It was arithmetic. Each sale, books, a blender, dresses I never chose for myself, fed the total at the bottom. Proof I was still capable of motion. For once, the math was on my side. The phone buzzed. Mom's voice message, sugar over steel. Sweetheart, your father didn't mean it like that. You know how he is. Translation. Forgive him fast enough that we can forget. Delete. No reply. Silence, at last, was mine to keep. By sunrise, I had a plan. Not just to leave. To disappear clean. To stop existing as the family's cautionary tale. And start existing as something without a witness. 6 weeks later, Kelsey called. Her voice was thin, frayed around the edges. Can we talk? She said. Please. The background was quiet. The kind of quiet that sounds like someone trying not to cry. I think I made a mistake. Her husband had vanished into excuses. Money, pressure, time, it didn't matter. She wanted to move back home, but couldn't face the speeches, the judgment, the same house that punished me for wanting air. When I arrived, her apartment looked half evicted. Wedding photos still in envelopes. Kitchen drawers echoing with absence. She folded a dress with the tag still on. You were right to leave, she said. Eyes on the fabric, not on me. I wanted to tell her that leaving doesn't feel right. It just stops feeling wrong. We packed in silence, boxes taped, hearts temporarily truce. When we finished, she hugged me, clumsy, trembling, like someone who finally understood how much a touch can cost. I let her. On the drive home, I transferred another $500 into my secret account. Renamed the spreadsheet again. Oxygen, not permission. Outside, the sky was a clean gray, the kind that erases everything evenly. Freedom was getting closer, measurable, countable, nearly touchable. If you've ever folded someone else's life into boxes, you know that some goodbyes sound like tape tearing. You know that helping someone leave can be the kindest rebellion. And if you ever get the chance, help them pack before you start your own escape. Because sometimes, love isn't staying. It's showing someone else the door you finally learned to open. The morning of the interview, I woke before the alarm. Coffee. Steam. A phone lighting up with my mother's name again and again. 4 missed calls before sunrise. I let them ring out, each one another thread snapping quietly. The room smelled like rain and purpose. I'd ironed the same blouse twice, out of nerves, maybe ritual. When the video call connected, the recruiter smiled too wide. They'd read my portfolio, said I sounded resilient. They had no idea what that word costs. Where do you see yourself in 5 years? She asked. It was a question I'd answered 100 times before safely. This time I didn't shrink. In a place where I don't have to ask permission to breathe, I said. For once, silence felt like space being made for me, not around me. When it ended, my pulse stayed high but clean. No guilt, no apology. The air outside the window looked washed. That's when the text from Kelsey came through. Don't come home. Mom found your spreadsheet. And below it, they're waiting for you. Doors closed. Be careful. My hand went cold around the phone. Of course she'd gone through my laptop. Just checking the battery, she'd say. Father would pace, reciting the family gospel of control. Mother would cry, her tears soft as diplomacy. They wanted a confession, not a conversation. I didn't give them one. Instead, I opened the closet, pulled out the half-packed suitcase, and laid it flat on the floor like a verdict. Jeans, laptop, the notebook labeled Next Chapter. I zipped it halfway, enough to keep the air in. Outside, thunder rolled once, distant and patient. Inside, everything finally aligned. Fear, relief, defiance. I wasn't running, I was reclaiming gravity. The house wanted me back in its orbit. But I'd already learned how to live without oxygen. Midnight was an accomplice. The house slept like it trusted me again. I moved through it on bare feet, suitcase handle wrapped in a towel so it wouldn't click. Every sound felt alive. The hum of the fridge, the whisper of the clock in the hall. Even the walls seemed to hold their breath. Kelsey's door cracked open. She stepped out, eyes red, hair tied back like she'd been waiting. "They think you're asleep," she whispered. "You shouldn't be here," I said. "I needed to see you before you go." She reached into her pocket and pressed a folded note into my hand. "Open this after you leave." Her hand shook, but her voice didn't. "They're angry," she said quietly, "because they don't own your story anymore." I almost smiled. Then they'll have to find a new ending. Downstairs, the air felt heavy, dense with ghosts of conversation. Mom's last text still glowed on my phone. "Come home, Nancy. We can talk about this like adults." Father's followed seconds later. "Don't make a mistake you can't undo." Their words used to sound like commandments. Now they just sounded like fear. I powered the phone off, slid it into the nightstand drawer. One last belonging left behind. Freedom deserved a clean signal. I lifted the suitcase. It didn't feel heavy, just final. At the side door, I hesitated long enough to look back. Not at the house. At the window of my old room, still dark. "That's all you get," I whispered. Outside, the taxi idled by the curb, headlights dimmed. The air was cool, the kind that belongs to no one. I closed the door behind me, soft but absolute. Some goodbyes don't echo. They seal. I wasn't leaving in anger. I was leaving in truth. The plane landed in Portland just before noon. Rain streaked the windows like static. Soft, relentless, cleansing. The air smelled different here. Cedar, coffee, the faint electricity of starting over. I waited until the cabin emptied before standing. Because I wasn't in a hurry to prove I'd arrived. The cab ride was a blur of gray streets and new names. When the driver asked, "First time in town?" I said, "First time anywhere." He didn't ask more. That was kindness. The apartment was small. Cracked tiles, thin walls, one window overlooking a parking lot. But the silence here had no edge. It didn't accuse, it didn't measure. It just existed. So did I. I unpacked slowly. Jeans, laptop, notebook, the folded note from Kelsey. I placed it in the kitchen drawer, under the cutlery. Not to hide it, just to keep it near the things that sustain me. I didn't read it yet. Some promises need to stay folded a little longer. That night, the radiator hissed, a strange, steady heartbeat filling the quiet. I realized I'd gone a whole day without apologizing for anything. The kind of peace that doesn't announce itself. It just sits down beside you and waits to be noticed. Outside, the rain didn't stop. It didn't need to. For the first time, neither did I. Freedom, I learned, isn't loud. It's just the absence of permission. Weeks passed like cautious footsteps. The city learned my name in small ways. A barista spelling it right. A neighbor's dog barking only once when I came home. It was enough. Work started quietly, then suddenly bloomed. The creative agency liked my voice, said my ideas had gravity. I wanted to tell them I'd spent years being trained for it. That in my house, gravity was a survival skill. Every paycheck felt unreal. Every morning, the light through the blinds looked like proof. I caught myself smiling at nothing, at the hum of the fridge, at the luxury of no one waiting to be pleased. Then one night, a text from Kelsey. "They're talking about you again." I didn't need to ask who they were. "Dad says you'll come around. Mom says you're being dramatic." I told them you're happier. I could see it, the dining room, the choreography of denial still perfectly rehearsed. I typed, "Don't defend me, just live." She replied, "I am. I got a job interview in Chicago." Freedom was contagious after all. 2 days later, an email from Lucas. "Flight booked. Coming this weekend, unless you've changed your mind." I hadn't. When he showed up, drenched in Portland rain, he carried 2 coffees and a smile I didn't need permission to trust. We walked downtown, no plans, no performance. "You seem lighter," he said. I stopped negotiating with guilt. "How's that working out?" "Feels like learning to breathe underwater. Awkward but survivable." We didn't kiss goodbye. We didn't need to. His presence wasn't rescue, it was witness. And for once, being seen didn't feel like debt. That night, I realized healing doesn't feel like fireworks. It feels like walking home in the rain and not flinching. Peace didn't arrive with applause. It came one morning when I realized the air was just air, not a test of how long I could hold it. I brewed coffee, opened the window, and the world didn't rush in or pull away. My phone sat face down. No new messages from home. No traps disguised as concern. Their silence no longer hurt. It simply existed, like a photograph that had lost its color. Sometimes I catch my reflection in the mirror. Same eyes, steadier pulse. The woman looking back isn't waiting to be forgiven. She isn't waiting for anything. She just looks alive in her own outline. Outside, the rain eased to a hush, the city breathing in rhythm with me. For the first time, quiet didn't mean caution. It meant choice. I used to think peace was the absence of noise. Now I know it's the presence of myself. A month later, a voicemail from Kelsey. Got the job, Chicago. Mom cried, mostly about control, I think. Her voice was calm, proud, free. I wouldn't have done it without you, she said. You were right. Leaving isn't cruel. It's how we stop pretending. I smiled, whispered to the empty room. I love you too. The air smelled like rain and rosemary from the balcony next door. Somewhere in the distance, a train horn cut the sky. A sound that once meant escape, now just meant life continuing. I sat by the window, soup steaming, candle flickering. The city outside hummed, indifferent, alive. I didn't hate the house I left. I just refused to live inside its story anymore. And for the first time, that refusal didn't feel like loss. It felt like air. The phone buzzed once, Mom's name. I let it ring until it stopped. Some goodbyes happen without ceremony. Some peace you earn by staying gone. If anyone asks where I went, tell them this. I didn't run away. I just stepped out of their story and started writing my own.